What if I told you right now that I could give you a 500% increase in productivity and a 500% increase in skill development today, and it transits throughout the rest of your life? I know I sound like a snake oil salesman, but that's actually exactly what I'm going to be doing today. Kinda. Welcome back to the new series I'm officially calling Science Saturday. New gaming improvement videos every Saturday, so leave your suggestions for next week in the comments down below. The best way to support me is a like, a comment, and watching all the way through. And I'm NotoriousDuB, longtime high-level FPS player, certified personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, and I have a minor in sports coaching from Auburn University. And I'm here to teach you, arguably, the most important skill to add to your gaming repertoire: the flow state. At the end of the video, as always, I'm going to be giving you guys a step-by-step concise guide to start implementing daily to help you get into the flow state. But for now, what is flow? The flow state is exactly that. It is a state of being, and I'm going to call a lot of people a liar by saying this. That, by definition, means you can't just enter the flow state on command, just like you can't, on command, become asleep, in love, relaxed, stressed, anxious, etc. But you can go to bed, which induces sleep, and do things that help you relax so you enter that state. And much the same, you can do things that allow you to enter the flow state. Now, if you're questioning the credibility of the flow state, at this point it's been proven so much that it's standard and recognized in modern day psychology and observed as real in over 10,000 scientific papers. And initially, it was discovered by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. From now on, I'll be referring to him as the father of flow, and this seemingly low-resolution PowerPoint is from a speech he gave in 2004. And flow is now defined as a loss of ego, aka your sense of self, and becoming fully immersed in the activity that you're doing. But along with that comes a synergy between all of the different parts of your brain, clarity, improved and more creative decision-making, loss of worry, timelessness, and intrinsic motivation. If you've watched my previous science video, The Ultimate Aim Guide, the flow state arises out of the zone of proximal development. It's that second zone that we talked about where you're properly stimulated, stressed even, but you're not overwhelmed, because flow state requires stress, but more specifically, eustress. The reticular activating system, the RAS, is the part of your brain that regulates arousal and consciousness, and it needs cortisol to function. And cortisol is a byproduct of stress. And eustress, in layman's terms, is moderate or normal psychological stress interpreted as being beneficial. And that last point is key. You have to observe your challenges and stressors as something that will make you better. Otherwise, you'll end up stuck in the struggle portion of the flow cycle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. The father of flow, throughout his studies, came up with a model of when flow arises, called the experience fluctuation model. And most of the work around the flow state was done around workplace and societal stressors. So as someone who operates in the sports sciences world, I've done the work to bridge the gap for you. And looking at this model, you can see a big reason I so heavily stress the importance of skill training, with aim being the most universal skill to develop, because there's two zones sitting as precursors to the flow state. When the challenge you're facing is middling and your skill level is high, you're in the control state. When the challenge you're facing is high and your skill level is middling, you're aroused. But when occupying either of those areas, changing your perception of your challenge level to take you from the control state to the flow state is definitely doable. But the act of increasing your skill level to get you from the aroused state to the flow state is arguably impossible in the moment. So the goal here is to be able to manipulate your perceived challenge level while being skilled enough and prepared enough for the challenge. Here's a little anecdote for you. Right when I started playing Valorant, I was ranking up relatively quickly, and I got into a game with Ninja and Hiko on my team. And coming from Fortnite and CSGO, that was a pretty big deal for me. And one round, it came time for me to clutch. I was the last one alive, they were spectating me, and through my performance of that round, Ninja said, and I quote, "I reminded him of the Gerber baby, with peanut butter all over me, in his high chair, and I'm using my mouse with my little peanut butter hands." Which is actually pretty funny, but a month later I was ranked top 400 in NA, so physically I was skilled enough to be there probably. But because of the stress that I placed upon myself, I ended up in a state of anxiety. So to manipulate this, we need to establish intrinsic motivation. That way we can establish stressors that we can control. Set clear goals for yourself. The clearer the better, even if it's as base level as focusing on hitting headshots. That will add one more level of eustress that is constantly there whenever it's getting too easy and you're getting bored. You can add a challenge, and if the challenge level is perceived as too high, it also takes your thoughts off of what is happening in game to a lesser stress because you're not worried about the game or round outcome, you're just improving. And if it feels like the task is also getting too intense, take a deep breath, focus solely on your exhale, and let everything else go. That way you're lowering the examined level of stress that you have, and you're getting closer to the flow state. Along that thread, there are also things that just make it impossible to enter the flow state, and we call those flow blockers. The most important and difficult of them being, in my opinion, comparison to another. You want to try your best to eliminate all of these blockers, but we all fall victim, as humans, of comparing ourselves to other people. It's natural, but by acknowledging your skill level versus someone else's, even if it's your opponent at the time and you're believing that you're way better than them, you're also feeding into the ego. And the flow state cannot exist while examining yourself. You must be focused and immersed solely on what you're doing. Now, the most consistent factors we found that prevent entering the flow state are internal distractions, external distractions, unclear goals, and time pressure. We are evolutionarily wired for flow state. We're highly intelligent, skill-based, instinctual creatures with a heightened sense of awareness when pressure is applied. We have an innate fight or flight response, but distractions and brain clutter stop you from being able to enter the flow state and perform optimally. So do your chores. Make your bed, as Jordan Peterson would say. You have to develop enough responsibility to identify the things that creep into your mind when gaming or whatever task you're trying to perform, and find ways to eliminate those from your conscience. Whether it's literally making your bed, worrying about your health, cleaning your room, checking your phone, if it comes in as a distraction during performance, find a way to eliminate it. Then set your goals. And the more specific and precise the goals are, the better. Hitting Eternity in Marvel Rivals is good, but there are better goals to set along the way. And I'm debating on making a goal setting video because it's so detailed and person dependent, but the one I always refer back to as a little example is focusing specifically on hitting headshots, because it's something you can actively focus on round to round, and you can elicit more or less stress depending on how much you decide to focus on it. Another huge buffer stopping you from entering the flow state is multitasking, and it's a huge misconception even to this day. So let me clear the air. Multitasking is a myth. The father of flow state puts it in terms of bits, and he states that the human mind can process 110 bits of information at a time, and it takes about 60 bits of information to process language, which is why you physically can't listen to two people at once. You can get close, but not perfect. It's why people zone out of a conversation when they look at their phone and drive poorly whenever they text. What you think is multitasking is actually just switching rapidly between multiple tasks, which obviously reduces performance. The important caveat though, if you watched my Ultimate Aim Guide, you heard me speak on creating instinctive movements. It's the autonomous stage of skill training where you're taking your focus on training and creating a movement that can be performed automatically and with high proficiency. In essence, it no longer or takes less of your brain's processing power to perform the movements you've been focusing on. And I think this is the whole trick to entering the flow state in gaming. You have to become proficient enough in the specific aspects of your game so that you're no longer having to focus on them, and you can let your body begin to play the game on its own and immerse yourself. You have to be able to trust your skills. Now on to the important stuff. We know now that the flow state can't be forced. We're just prepping ourselves to enter the state naturally. And we originally thought of the flow state as binary. You're either in the flow state or you're not. But Herbert Benson, medical doctor and founder of the Mind Body Medical Institute, discovered the flow cycle. We no longer believe it's binary. There's a cycle to it, and it goes like this: struggle, release, flow state, and recovery. The first stage, struggle, is actually the exact opposite of flow. It's research, learning, training, pressure. It's a clutch time. It's the buildup of cortisol and adrenaline, which in excess feel like frustration and anxiety. But they're actually natural processes that have caused us to survive as the human race. So personally, I like to call this the challenge phase instead. Next comes the release phase. It's the letting go. It's walking, sitting down to have tea, taking your mind off of your task, or breathing. It's actually anything that elicits alpha brain waves, and as athletes, we have to be able to create those in a split second. And my suggestion is breathing and mental cues. In the basketball world, it's always one word like swish, wet, water, money, net. Whenever you're about to let a shot go, you're taught to think of your mental cue. And if you like talking trash, you usually say it out loud. In gaming, I always tell people to think headshots, because that should be everyone's focus anyway, but it quickly becomes a mental cue. It's not just an empty word you're saying, it's now something to focus on. The other thing that creates alpha brainwaves is deep breathing. So combine them just like this. And the whole time I'm thinking of the word headshots. With those combined, you're creating alpha brainwaves on cue, and you're exiting the struggle phase, pushing through the release phase. Next is the flow phase. When the release phase is being pushed through, you center back in on your activity. This kind of comes naturally at this point, but let it happen. Feel good neurochemistry is going to take place, dopamine, serotonin, and your brain is going to work in sync. You're in a heightened state of performance and awareness, and the more you allow yourself to fall into the flow state, the longer your segments of flow become, and the more often you're going to be able to access it. Finally comes the recovery phase. Flow can be biologically expensive because your brain uses a lot of energy and it's working faster and more efficiently than it ever does, but this phase is naturally occurring. If you get to the point where you're entering flow so well that you need to worry about pulling yourself out so you have enough recovery time, you're struggling from success, man. You don't need this video anymore. Congratulations to you. Now, all of this is important, but if you can't control your mind, you can't really apply these things that I've been giving examples of anyway. So that brings us to arguably the most important part. Because by learning meditation, you'll find yourself accidentally slipping into flow all the time, because meditation is simply gaining control over your brain. If you watch my aim training video, you know the benefits of meditation physiologically, with the increases of gray matter, etc. But meditation in practice should be about focusing deeply, staying present in the moment to filter out distractions. Key point, be nice to your brain. As you begin to meditate and focus on the one thing, you'll have a thought pop into your mind. If you struggle against it, you'll start thinking about the fact that you're thinking, and then you're thinking about the fact that you're thinking about the fact that you're thinking, and then your brain's in a blender and you've lost all focus. Instead, acknowledge the thought, allow it to unfold, and then let it go. Get back to your practice. So here's 3 ways to practice. The easiest is breath observation. Take a nice deep breath and let it out, nice and slow, and focus solely on your breath, and just maintain that. Your gaps of focus will be tiny at first, but over time they will grow and grow and grow. That's by far the most popular form of meditation teaching, but it is quite easy and it's easier to get distracted that way. So for starting off, I recommend fixed point gazing. It's where you pick a point that you want to focus on. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you want to keep your eyes open and stare at it for as long as possible. This way you've introduced a challenge, and you also have something to focus on. You're also experiencing feedback, which makes it much easier to maintain a specific area of focus. Just don't overdo it and dry your eyes out. If it starts to burn, close your eyes and allow yourself to feel the relief. And the relief portion of this is actually a really awesome side effect. It's going to feel great. And then my personal favorite, the way I practice most of the time now, is active meditation. It's probably a little bit more advanced, but whenever I'm doing low effort, steady state tasks like walking or running, or taking breaks between your sets at the gym, walking to your car, any downtime menial task that you have, you can probably meditate. If you need fixed point meditation to help you begin this, then do that. Find something to focus on while you walk, and whenever you turn a corner, just pick something else. But for me, it's usually just about clearing my mind and focusing on whatever is around me. The color of the leaves, the way this cool air feels on my skin, the way my lungs feel whenever I breathe when I run, any sensation that I can observe, that's the focus of my active meditation. It makes the menial task fly by, and I'm getting my practice in at the same time. Finally, let's wrap it all up with 6 concrete things for you to do daily to allow you to tap into the flow state. First and foremost, eliminate flow blockers. Any negative triggers. Do what is stressing you out. If it's distracting you, take care of it. Even if it doesn't get you into the flow state, you'll end up a happier person. Number 2, develop your skill set. Without a high enough skill level to live up to the challenge that you're perceiving, you'll be stuck in a state of anxiety, which is not where you want to be. And carrying off of that, you need to be developing instinctive movements as well. Number 3, set your goals. You need to have specific goals. The more specific, the better, because without goals, it's difficult to change your perception of the challenge that you're facing. And it's also difficult to induce eustress, making you realize that the stress you're feeling is going to be beneficial for you in the long run, so push through. Number 4, do your meditation training. Controlling your brain is important, and even if you don't do anything else on this list, if you get good at meditation, you'll still accidentally slip into the flow state every once in a while. It's a win-win. Number 5, develop mental cues to reground yourself whenever you're getting close to the flow state. Headshot, speed, tight, whatever your word is, make it mean something to your game. And finally, number 6, challenge yourself. If you're too skilled for the challenge at hand, you're going to be bored. So find your own challenge. And regardless, you improve way more when you get out of your comfort zone anyway. So set your own goalposts. Hopefully all of this helps you tap into the flow state. And as always, thanks for tuning into this episode of Science Saturday. Leave suggestions for next week down below. If you have any questions, I do my best to answer all of them in the comments and or on my Twitch channel. And the best way to support me is a like and a comment. I'd like to thank you for being here. I'll see you guys next Saturday.